She is. Mollly Wood. Wow, what a pleasure, what an honor to meet a woman who has accomplished so much. I'm very happy to have you on my show.
I am thrilled to be here. You're making me blush.
Well, you've done a lot. You've been, I don't know, how many careers would you say you've had? I mean, because mainly journalism and now like venture capitalism and media in general, consulting. And I have no idea how old you are, but it seems like you've lived like a few careers.
It has kind of happened that way. Yeah, it's funny because the bulk of it was journalism, but I was lucky enough, even in journalism, to fall into digital media super early, to be doing, web video and podcasting as far back as 2005, because thank you, pretty old. Um, and it was a journalism career that encompassed a bunch of careers. And then in the last, I would say 3 to 4 years, I think I've had 3 full pivots.
Really, in that short amount of time?
I think so. I mean, it was around 2017, 2018 because I was a tech and business reporter for basically my entire journalism career. And then 2016-ish just was like, I have to figure out a way into the climate story. I have to figure out how to make this my story. And so I really pivoted a lot of my reporting to climate. Then I pivoted to venture capital. And now I'm a founder. I'm an entrepreneur. Now I have a company. I'm
Yeah.
tired.
I
Come to think of it.
I want to talk about it all, but now I almost want to like just talk about like more personal, like work-life balance and how you do it all. And if there were any major failures. I like all those podcasts that are always like, entrepreneurs that failed or succeeded and why. But it's always interesting to know, what worked and what didn't. It sounds to me like you went into journalism to cover climate, and then you just kept pivoting within that field of trying to, I guess the word everybody uses now is leverage the issue and find ways to solve it, really, or to work on solving it, I guess.
100%. Yeah. So clearly, as you have pointed out, listening to, and I know this about myself, I'm curious. I'm a little bit of a butterfly, even in the jobs that I've had. I'm a little bit of an entrepreneur. It is the climate thing, I think, that has led to so many more pivots. And that's not a surprise, right? It's a mission. It's a really big and still profoundly undercovered story. And I hesitate to even call it a story, because it is in fact the life that we are living and are going to live, every day. That I think then led to a whole series of real pivots. Like I went into venture capital because I wanted to try to have a more direct impact. I thought, okay, well, I've been storytelling my whole life and it's great, but we don't have time to change minds. I got to like get boots on the ground and give people some money to start really doing these solutions. And then ironically, as soon as I did that, I realized, oh, wow, we really need a lot of climate storytelling. And we need storytelling about how it's the biggest business story in the world, and about how,
I mean, not to interrupt you, I'm sorry, but you're combining both your career and skills in media and investing to create a podcast, which I think is pretty original, that tells us and instructs us how to think about investing and consuming as it relates to climate. I mean, I've listened to all 3 of your episodes and I've learned a whole bunch just as like a homeowner or a car owner or an investor. And I think it's exactly, perfect for someone like you. And I really think it's also, I got to say, I'll keep plugging it, perfect for everybody to listen to, because everybody is affected by the issue. It's not just some kind of niche podcast. Everybody can learn from this. How did I do?
I mean, can you be my agent? That's incredible. Thank you.
Well,
but also
there's a lot of people who are, understand how media works, how to do a good interview, how to edit that interview as well. And then also the issue itself. And so much of it really is now, as you said, I think investing to some extent, because there was the issue that scientists discovered. Some of us were all in, like me at the beginning. I'm, by the way, a sucker. I bought everything. Some of it works, some of it doesn't. And then there is the government slowly responding to it. And now, this is what I'm going to say, I'm just making this up as I go along. There's the market. The market response is really interesting, because now more than ever, and it's increasing seemingly every day, there's money to be made. And we're not going to argue whether capitalism is the way out or the problem right now, maybe another time, but certainly there's a lot of capital. How am I doing there? Is that what you're
100%,
doing?
100%. And frankly, I think it's not even an argument. It's both. Capitalism is a problem and it's the solution. It's like I keep saying over and over, it's the greatest incentive system that humans have ever created. And I'm a business reporter, and this is fundamentally a business story. It's an investment, it's a financial story, and it is a consumption story. It's a story about what we adopt as people, and like, I make no bones about it. It is about what we adopt as wealthy people in wealthy countries. Like, if you are in the top 10% of earners in the United States of America and you're not adopting climate solutions, you're like pretty much a climate criminal right now. I'm sorry, it's rude, but this is, it's a time for hard truths. That's what creates markets, drives down cost curves so that you don't have to convince everybody to care. You just have to create a world in which the only stuff that's on the shelf is better.
Right. Don't you think government has to incentivize and regulate around that so that the products are better, so that they are worth it? I mean, I can still buy something cheaper that's going to pollute in many cases, in many scenarios, than, I just saw did you see this like tabletop composter?
Yes,
I
I'm
mean,
kind of obsessed with those.
I am too, but I mean, I don't think it's the most efficient thing in the world. In the end, it's way better to have, a bin out back.
Right.
Obviously, if you live in an urban area, you can't do that. But I mean, I just think that government needs to do a lot of incentive building in terms of tax credits, much less regulations, and control or consuming probably more. I don't know. What do you think about how government has done or where its place is?
Yeah, I could not agree with you more. And I want every solution. I want everybody in every town to be advocating for curbside compost pickup with transparency about where that compost goes. And if you can be composting, great, right? Turns out chickens, like owning chickens, massively reduces kitchen scraps, AKA landfill. So so to me, yes to all of that. Layer on all of the solutions, adopt whatever you can, great. And yes, we
Mollly, what I'm
100% need
hearing,
that investment from government.
what I'm hearing is that, as mostly as a comedian, is that
Mhm.
you think government should be giving every family a dozen chickens.
100%. No doubt. You have perfectly interpreted my policy recommendations. I've
I
written this
can't
up as
wait.
a white paper for the Biden administration. Chickens for all.
I can't wait. I can't wait. I'm very excited. Roosters, I don't know if you know this, total assholes. I just will say that about roosters.
I know. I've
I don't know
heard.
if you've ever
Yeah.
met a rooster, but there are no good ones. I'm just
Yeah.
saying. So you go deep in the podcast. Tell me a little bit about what you're trying to do with the new show. You've been podcasting for a long time. You've been very successful. It's clear when someone presses play, this is a person who really knows what they're doing in terms of word economy, in terms of sound, in terms of even the people that they choose to interview, as well as the subject matter. I'm all in. I'm really enjoying it already. So tell people about what you're trying to do every week.
I really appreciate that you said that this is a show for everybody, because I actually genuinely think it is. It's a business focused show. It's about what I am calling the climate economy. That's the economy that we live in right now. And to your point on regulation, the Biden administration has, in the form of 3 different acts, not just the Investment Reduction Act, right? But the CHIPS Act and the infrastructure bill all represent a like New Deal level of money and investment and subsidy around climate tech. Like, it is actually phenomenal, the amount of investment that's occurring right now, making this a game changer in terms of the next economy. We have the opportunity to like transition our economy and give people tons of jobs, right? And it's like everyday life, it's innovators. So what I'm trying to do with this show is talk to innovators, talk to people who want to pivot their careers into climate, and then talk to people who are making climate already a part of their career. So in the case of the last episode, I talked to a real estate agent and an interior designer, because it turns out that buying a home now includes a bunch of climate considerations. Selling a home, you
Who
can
was
make
that woman?
more
She
money.
was so good at
She's so
talking.
good.
She's a real estate agent, so I'm sure she's got great communication skills. But I was like, this is a person. I don't know if they do podcasts a lot, but she really was great at explaining. You guys seem to have a familiarity with each other, but I really enjoyed her.
She is, and she's my real estate agent,
Ah,
and she happens to be right. Like, it's this kind of. I mean, this is the best thing about being an independent podcaster, is that I'm like, yeah, I called my real estate agent and my
no,
friend who's an interior designer, because they're both incredible and they're in the Bay Area, and they're early adopters of making this, like, they can differentiate their careers
Yeah.
by having this layer on top of it. And it's just super interesting. It's all so interesting.
Where do you get caught up? I mean, I feel like you're a California person, right? Fully
Yeah.
California. Are you fully Californian person? I didn't get
I grew up in Montana and North Dakota, actually, almost in equal measure, 50-50. And my family's all still there.
Why
So I'm
would
Northern California now, but I have like baseline.
why would anybody
practicality.
that's ever been in Montana leave to go to North Dakota is my question. Do I
You
have North
know,
Dakota wrong? It seems not as
I,
good as Montana.
I mean, I will tell you that at this exact moment, North Dakota is creeping ahead in the sanity department
Oh, yeah, yeah,
of
yeah. I mean,
Montana.
they just
Yeah.
they banned pig.
Montana's a great state that doesn't have a lot of jobs, turns out.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so getting back to the podcast and the subject matter, everybody in the pool, a climate solutions podcast. You mentioned, working climate into no matter what you are doing. That's a scary word for some people. I feel like sustainability sounds like cha-ching. It's equal to dollar signs.
Hmm.
How do we talk about the issue to convince that everybody that it's not that controversial? I mean, whether you care about pollution and climate and the environment and nature, or you just are a huge capitalist, like everybody could win here if we stop being scared of some of the language around it. I feel like that's where we're at in 2023, having talked about it for 15 years.
Mm-hmm. It really is, and unfortunately, it's gotten. I think it is no coincidence that it has gotten caught up in the culture wars because we all know where fossil fuel political lobbying money goes, right? So I think there's no coincidence that the rhetoric, the kind of anti-climate rhetoric, has gotten a lot more intense and coordinated because we're at a moment where the money is moving away from fossil fuels. It just is. Like absent Russia's invasion of Ukraine, we were at peak oil. This is a declining asset class, like full stop. And I like, though, the market research, the accidental market research we just did about sustainability being like a more money sounding word than climate. I think the way we talk about it is in just purely practical terms, right? There is no politics. Fundamentally, there are no politics here and there's no downside. Somebody sent me a cartoon the other day and it was, I'm at a climate conference and on the slides, it's like clean water, clean air, jobs for people, clean rivers, healthy ecosystem, happy animals. And there's someone in the audience who's like, what if it's all a big hoax and we just create a way better world for nothing? Right? No downside.
Yeah, well, the downside, of course, is if we do nothing, or the downside. I've always said to people, like, what if we're wrong? It will be a disaster. So, we'd love to be wrong. We would love to be wrong about this issue, and
If
the
we're
science.
wrong and we have like quiet cars on the streets and airplanes that go overhead that are hydrogen and they only emit water and animals like don't go extinct and there's no plastic in the ocean, but we're wrong about the actual impacts of climate change.
Yeah, but I mean,
Right? Like what I'd rather be wrong with a wonderful world of like new clean technologies than wrong by not doing anything and then we cook.
I I hate that we have to even discuss that though right now. That was the argument from 15 years ago. Now it's not. There's no longer what if. You live in California. You've already covered this in the first 3 episodes of your podcast. It's
Mhm.
happening. We're watching
Mhm.
it happen. You can't get insurance on your home in certain places because it might burn down. That's as a result of human activity. I guess you could argue that you don't think it is, but regardless, it is happening in so many different ways across this country, and obviously even worse for underdeveloped countries who are not responsible for the problem that we are. So if you care about morality and justice, but like at this point, it's
Mhm.
happening. You live in California, you talk about this, right? There's no
It's
longer
not
no
just
denial.
And it's not just California. It's really, I mean, we're seeing like the extent to which we have not covered the unbelievable destruction of flooding and storms in the middle of the country and the, southeast of the United States, not to mention the like, there's a mega typhoon right now out in the ocean. I mean, it's like, it's here. I will say it is looking all too likely that we are about to go through a collective year or 2 of weather that I think could be a make or break. They're talking about the El Nino that is developing that could be a global weather pattern over the next year or 2 that will push global temperatures over 1.5 degrees Celsius for the first time. Like, we're about to enter some pretty uncharted territory. I don't know, people have been saying for decades, this, having talked about this for so long, that nobody will do anything until the floodwaters are actually at their feet. I'm not even convinced that that will sell everybody.
I think that's true as a result of COVID. Like, we know that
Exactly.
because of COVID, everybody compared that to climate. And, what's that movie, the Netflix movie with Leonardo DiCaprio with the asteroid? I mean,
Don't
like,
look up. Yeah,
Don't Look Up depicted that. Well, let me
it's
ask you
true.
about, go ahead.
No, it's totally true.
Yeah.
And that is why I really do agree with you about policy and activism. It's a three-legged stool. Like, nothing gets done without awareness, activism, and economics.
Yeah.
But I am not one of these people who thinks if you just invent a new technology that everybody will use it, because we invented a magical new vaccine and 40% of Americans refuse to take it.
Yes, but I guess that's where you can differentiate, because if you invent a new fuel or car or even investment that is going to save or make me money, I will use it. I'm
Yeah.
not, I guess. I mean, some very few people, these guys that insist on having large fossil fuel burning trucks, they're like not a huge percentage. There's too many of them in America, but like most people are going to buy the car. And by the way, you can make that quote manly pickup, and truck in every way, and add your own sound effects and whatever you want. Let me ask you though about capitalism, about investment, about what you've seen and what you're now covering, because I think about this all the time. And I just read an article about a company that is doing carbon capture that has a huge amount of money invested. And I'm like, I want to put all my money in that company that's going to take the carbon out, that's going to capture the pollution. I really want to do that, except I don't want to lose all of my money. Talk to me about what you're seeing in terms of trends and how capitalists and investors have, from my view, have really caught on because they're making money now.
Right. It's a big investing bubble right now, and it's been very interesting to watch it inflate. And you've seen a lot of sort of long-time venture capitalists who made all their money kind of go like, I'm going to do climate for the rest of my career, which is great. But also you're seeing billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar funds get raised to invest in this technology. There are, as with all things, like upsides and downsides to that. A lot of people are going to lose a lot of money on things like carbon capture, and then we might have a situation. There was a big bubble in clean tech investing in the kind of late 90s, early 2000s that people call in the Valley the clean tech 1.0 bubble. That was a ton of money that went into primarily solar panels, technology deployment. It was a lot of venture capital dollars invested. It was led by John Doerr, who's a legendary investor at Kleiner Perkins. And everybody lost all their money. Like, subsidies went away. China came in and made really, really cheap solar panels and undercut the entire US market. And all of a sudden, VCs would not touch anything green for a decade.
Yeah,
Now they're back, and they're
it's
making a lot of the same mistakes all over again because they're investing in things that take a really long time to commercialize or to make any money. And also they're doing things a lot better this time around too. So it's like going to be some interesting times. We may have some PR hurdles to overcome in VC soon if we have some high profile failures, but I think it's going to stick because, like we keep saying, this is reality now. This is just the world we live in.
right, because technology has advanced to a place, and probably with AI, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I refuse to learn. I'm just so ignorant, but I'm guessing that's going to help develop, like every other technology, clean energy technology, and in a way that maybe we couldn't predict just having done it with our human brains. Anything on
Mhm.
that, Mollly?
Yeah,
Like,
that's,
are the computers going to save us and then kill us?
I mean, the downside is that the computers do use like a lot of energy as they attempt to learn how to think, and that is a bummer. Um, AI is massively energy intensive. It is not quite as bad as Bitcoin, so yay for
Well,
that.
one was doing something and one isn't, right? Like,
Yes. So
so
at least AI is doing something, and it can be used to, when people talk about how AI can do this, it's like it's efficiencies in terms of distributing energy so that you don't get a lot of waste. It's new materials design, right? It's simulating different types of battery chemistries. Like, there are sort of a lot of problems that computers will be able to solve, that AI will be able to contribute to. And so, yes to all of that, and also yes to the entrepreneurs who are figuring out how to make data centers way more energy efficient and use less water. And so it's going to have to be like a whole bunch of technologies in parallel, but that's my whole deal. Yes to everything. Yes, everything.
And you're the person to like break this stuff down. Like I said, I'm really enjoying it. I mean, I was already enjoying you on the other work that you're doing in tech, and you're so good on the air, but like your network is also really impressive in the way that you guys communicate on the show. I'm really excited about this new podcast. Everybody in the pool, go subscribe right now. Look at me, just plugging away. I'm just
Love this.
well, I want to do whatever I can to promote and to platform, to 1,000, 10,000, a million people, any of these ideas too. I think that we in media need to do that as well. Pick winners and losers. Get me excited about something, Mollly. It's been a little bit like it's gloom. This whole subject can be really scary and gloomy. Get me excited about something. I'm sure there's something to be ecstatic about.
Oh my God. There is so much cool stuff out there. I mean, really, truly, I have the most hopeful job in the world. I talk to these because all of this was an attempt to answer the question, who's working on this? Right? Like, I'm like, oh, all I ever hear about is this huge problem. Who's working on this problem? And it turns out a ton of people, and they are brilliant. The entrepreneurs that I talk to, I mean, founders, I know that they can get a bad rap because somebody will have a big blow up, but what an incredible group of people who are like, oh, turns out I can use mushrooms to turn old construction material into new sustainable construction material, or to turn food waste into mushroom flour that doesn't give you diabetes and you can bake anything with it, or nuclear fusion, which is either a pipe dream or the thing that actually genuinely lets us raise our kids in an energy utopia. Like, that stuff is real, and people are really working on it across the spectrum. I love all of it.
If we just had another planet to develop it for a little longer on.
Just like, can you just work on that in a little safe space?
Yeah, I mean, I think about the potential utopia, and it's been depicted in so many, different films and so on that we've seen throughout our lives, where we can have this, and we so can have it. It's just the forces working against it still, including the legacy energy companies. Where do you see the future of fossil fuel? How much do you think about that with your? I mean, obviously, you've thought about it as a journalist. You've been covering it forever, but like, where are they now?
I mean, unfortunately, they are still very much in supervillain territory. Like, you're really still seeing coordinated disinformation campaigns. You're seeing tons of money go into local elections. Like, I have a 3-part strategy for people who want to do something about climate, and it actually starts with voting. Like, vote, invest, and adopt.
I swear to God, I thought you said boating. I was like, where is she going?
Starts with just run away on a boat. Just run away, give up.
No, voting. Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
Voting, yes. So we're still, like I said, we're still seeing unfortunate amounts of lobbying, disinformation, and, sort of meddling in this nascent economy. However, you are seeing money move in the opposite direction. Long term, people really do understand that this isn't a winning place to put your money. Now, a thing we have to be very honest about, and I really do try to do this. This is a transition. And so we have to talk about what goes into the transition. There are people who are adamantly opposed to carbon capture because they're like, well, that just lets fossil fuel companies keep doing business as usual, and it lets them off the hook because we capture the carbon. Okay, well, would you rather not capture the carbon? I would like to capture the carbon. And the truth is that we're still going to use fossil fuels for a while. And so we should do that in the best possible way. And then we should only use what we've taken out so far and not take out anything more. Like, that to me is the key. Be honest about a transition. Plastics, we're still going to need them for a while, and they are made from fossil fuels. Yeah. You cannot force everybody to buy an electric car. They're just not going to be able to. They can't afford it. It's a transitional period. If we leave what's in the ground, use what we have in the cleanest way possible, and get everybody, as many people as we can, to the other side as soon as we can. Like, it's a real strategy, but it has to be intentional and honest.
I love the way you're saying it. A lot of nuance there. I think it's completely fair. If I didn't, I'd try to push back on it, but I think that's, mostly where we're at as well. What about the issue? And are you thinking about, well, you've been covering anything with the animals. The animals are given by different analysis, different amount of percentages of how much of a cause us raising and devouring these delicious beasts are. And it's the worst thing I do, I guess. I don't know what the percentage is, but the bottom line is there's been a lot of different investments, ideas, and solutions. I just read an article that says like a lot of these fake meat companies are probably not going to survive. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong about that. What do you think about potential for getting rid of some of these, basically biologically grown cows? But I mean, they're natural, but I mean, you know what I'm talking about. They're everywhere, and they're a huge problem. What, if anything, can be done there?
They're a huge problem. And I agree with you that I hope that the kind of replacement meat companies make it. And it is really, really, really hard to change people's patterns, especially around eating. And that's where it's incremental improvements in the system across the board. We could be raising cows way more efficiently than we are, and that could be regulated. We could force that onto these industries, and we could force transparency, and we could force improvements. Does that get us all the way there? No. But if we combine that with less consumption overall, right? Just a sort of a habitual opportunity, more items on the menu, and we start to have alternate proteins and alternatives that are maybe not like, I think people are just weirded out by Beyond Meat and Impossible. But some people are still going to eat that, right? So you can have this kind of like buffet of options. Also, one of the things I really get nerdy about is aquaculture. Like, it turns out that there's like thousands of basically vegetables, some of which contain a lot of protein in the ocean that we can cultivate extremely quickly and with very low impact that can start to be part of our like menu.
Are they delicious?
I don't know.
That sounds interesting.
They probably can be. Like, imagine if you were a chef at Chez Panisse and you were like, wait, there are 2,600 vegetables I've never heard of. They're going to make it delicious.
First of all, Mollly, not all of us know this hoity-toity restaurant that you like to do. Second of all,
coastal elite moment.
I know, from the ocean. It's awesome.
From the ocean.
But more importantly, like, again, going back to your podcast, like listening to you talk about these things and getting excited about them, both as a consumer and an investor, is where that hope that you mentioned definitely lies, which is why I love what you're doing here. What about the future of transportation? That's something I talk about pretty regularly here. You mentioned that electric cars are still unaffordable. I bought my first one in 2010. I think it was like $50,000. My wife still resents me for getting it until I got a second one, and now she's annoyed by that too because we're having battery issues with my second Chevy Volt, which is a nightmare. I've adapted early to solar panels as well, and I lease them. So is that going to make my house harder to sell? You cover that in I think episode number 2, at least out in California. Who knows, how that's affected regionally. But getting back to the automobiles, that seems to be a really exciting thing for people to talk to. And we're finally, like I said, I bought mine in 2010. It's 13 years later, and now everybody's getting one if they can afford one, because there's no reason not to.
Right.
What they can't all afford them. That seems to be the problem. Why not?
I have some patience for this because it is the process of all new technologies. It takes a long time for things to become affordable. And there are fairly affordable electric car options now. Like, if you're and not everybody is, and that's fine, right? But like, if you're in the $22,000 and up car buying range, you can afford an electric car. You can certainly lease one. I mean, I am not a Tesla fan, but the Model 3 at a $399 a month lease, that's a really pretty amazing deal. And in fact, what I'm starting to see, and that tells me that these have gotten way more affordable, is that all the Ubers in the San Francisco Bay Area now are a Model 3 or a Model Y, much like they all used to be Priuses, because it's just the more economic choice.
Yeah.
It is way cheaper to charge your car than to buy gas. I think that we should probably have a bigger and better conversation about plug-in hybrids. Right now, they're like the worst of both worlds, and they're expensive, but they are an interesting kind of transition option for people who can't have an electric car be their only car. I grew up in Montana and North Dakota. Like, you can't,
Yeah.
that's not going to work. you
Yep,
know?
I've had the plug-in hybrid for, like I said, I got a Chevy Volt, that's what that is.
Yeah.
But, well, I'm glad
But
to hear.
it's sexy too, like, right? It's all the posts I do about cars, it's the coolest. I'm a car nerd. I, like,
Yeah.
went to race car school. The coolest thing happening in car culture right now is EVs.
You mean in the car culture that many of us are not in? Those of you who are nerds in car culture are all talking about EVs?
I
The
think people who are buying cars right now, that EVs are the interesting choice. I mean, I still get Car and Driver, and they are very reluctant. Like, it's not the interesting thing necessarily on the gearhead side of things,
Right.
but it's creeping in
Oh,
because they're so fast, they're so silent. Like, that's where all the interesting kind of interior innovation is happening. And so even the old, the gearheads, the wrench monkeys of Car and Driver are starting to, like, reluctantly come around.
Mollly, will you on your new show? I know you guys don't talk a lot of politics, but will you on your new show talk about politics or policy as it comes up? We are still the only country with the only political party that is in denial about the problem, much less
Mhm.
wanting to invest in the solution. But that fossil fuel money is going to become less and less. But at this point, and I covered politics my whole career, campaign finance was always an issue. I think it's less of an issue. It takes backseat to ideology now. So even though guns are the most unpopular thing in the world, they still pass because it's an ideology and it wins elections. I think the same is true of climate, unfortunately. I mean, Ron DeSantis just shat upon climate yesterday in his announcement. And it's like, this is really the only political party. You can go to Scandinavia, you can go to Asia, you can go to pretty much anywhere in the world, and that's not an issue. How much will you discuss that, think about it, and talk to people about it on your show?
I have to. It's not, I mean, it's the first bullet point on my 3-point plan for individual action is vote. And at this point, when I tell you to vote, I'm by default telling you to vote for a Democrat
Yeah.
because, like
Yeah.
you said, we have an entire political party who stopped even talking about the merits and literally just said, and it was, I think, 2018, the US climate assessment came out. So by law, as a result of George H.W. Bush, because his Secretary of State's office was telling him, hey, this climate change thing could be a real economic and national security concern for the United States.
Yeah.
The George H.W. Bush administration mandated that every 4 years, the United States conduct a national climate assessment and to talk about the economic and the security risks posed by climate change and global warming. That came out in 2018. And President Trump said, nah, I don't believe it. And that was it. There's no longer even they're not even trying to say like, oh, the science is wrong or it could be this or whatever. It's just like, nope.
I
And it
always like to
became
bring
religion.
when anybody brings up that really important salient point that you just did, I always like to bring up military historian Tom Ricks, who I never will forget watching on Meet the Press around the time of the beginning of the invasion of Iraq in 2002, 3, where I think it was Tim Russert asked him, when are we going to have to, why are we having these wars? When are we going to get out of the Middle East? And Tom Ricks, a military historian, said, it's about energy. The only solution is that was 2002. We fought a horrific war where hundreds of thousands of innocent people died, where veterans are killing themselves every day over energy if you were to water it down. And that's what Tom Ricks said then. And he's, not some liberal climate hippie. It's geopolitics, it's foreign policy, it's war and peace more than anything. Sorry for getting on my soapbox there, but I
I
always
love
think
it.
it's important to mention that we knew exactly what was going to happen, and it happened.
Yeah. And Exxon knew since the 70s.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
with remarkably, terrifyingly accurate science. And because I want a better world for all of us, I want the Republican Party to find a way to talk about this because they know. And, we've over and over, there are studies that say, like, if you just ask people about their grandchildren, if you ask about conservation is a fundamental Republican value.
Eh,
It used to be,
nothing.
it genuinely used to be like conserve the land, conserve the air for hunting, for recreation, like all of that. And so I hope that economics and job creation can be the way in.
I do
But
too.
until it is, like right now, it's an ideology that is just
Yeah, I don't know how we
that is mass murder. Like, what do you want me to say? It's the party of death.
I don't well, I agree with you. I don't know how we get around that. I mean, I'd love to think that they, we could use arguments like this is the fundamental of the Republican Party, or what the NRA used to be was about hunting, or any of these issues. But at the bottom line is now, when we come up with solutions, when we find problems like this new study, I think it's pretty good, that natural gas heated ovens are like a huge primary cause for children who have asthma. So I don't know. I'm not some liberal, like we can't be doing that, or we have to have regulations around that if we're going to have natural gas ovens, because it gives kids asthma. And now it becomes a grievance and a culture war issue, as opposed to us having serious conversations about the future of our ovens and the sources of energy. Like we can't, and everybody could make money off that, like you're saying.
Yeah,
But
totally.
unfortunately, I feel
And
like
I wish I had a solution other than like we have to have serious conversations, because engaging in the culture war conversation is not a serious conversation. It is not backed up by facts or right. It's sort of like, I reject your framing. I am not interested in making this a culture war conversation, because it's not.
I mean, we live in such a weird world where everybody in the pool, a climate solution podcast by you, who's covered this for so long, which is entertaining and informing, and could make you money.
Yeah. And I'm a dirty capitalist.
And she's a dirty capitalist, is not going to get the ratings that Steven Crowder on YouTube does, or, because and they're having a completely different conversation. You're over here with solutions and ideas where everybody can win. And yet we're up against these people who minimize and simplify and create fear around everything. And they just get monster viewers. I don't know. I wish I knew how to change that. I've been trying to for 15 years, but
I know.
people like you are definitely doing a great job at it. And so it's a great show and great work. Let's see. Why don't we end on you giving us little preview of what you're thinking about doing for the show. Also, there's a Substack connected to it that everybody should subscribe to, right? And people should contact Mollly if they want consulting ideas as well. But what's coming up next, everybody in the pool, this awesome new podcast?
Thank you. I'm super excited. I have a bunch of wonderful startup interviews in the can. I am really, because of my marketplace and economics reporting background, I'm very into these financial tools that let individuals invest in renewable energy projects, or that let people advocate for better 401k options in their businesses. Those are 2 episodes that are coming up. And then you are going to love, actually, this company called Finch is all about helping you find sustainable alternatives to the products you're already buying. They've got a plugin that works on Amazon and Target. They've got a website where you can just be like, what could I do better in terms of diapers? And it's just those are the things that I just want to keep highlighting. Stuff you can really actually do that isn't very hard. And if everybody just does a little bit, then a drop becomes a flood.
I'm really excited to meet you. I was excited before I started talking to you, because I was researching you and I was like, oh man, I thought she was just a podcaster. I didn't know about your entire career as a journalist. I just knew you were really good at talking out important issues and technology. But then having done the deep dive, I'm a fan, I'm a supporter, I'm a subscriber, and I hope everybody else gets in the pool as well, because these are the kinds of shows that we should be supporting. Thank you so much for joining me, Mollly. Good luck, and let's do it again whenever you want.
Great. I'll come back anytime. Thank you, Pete.